You guys, it's finished. 2024 Project Life is in the books. If you're new here, my name is Linda. Welcome to my channel. And in this video, I'm going to be flipping through the second half of my 2024 Project Life album. Let's go ahead and dive right in. '24 is my 12th year completed of Project Life, and I am still as in love with this project as I was when I first started it. If you're new to Project Life, I have an entire series about that, which I will link down in the description box below, and you might want to go head over there and check out those videos to get an introduction to what Project Life is and some tips and tricks for creating your own album. For my second half of 2024, this album covers July through December, and I have another album covering January through June, which you can also see on my YouTube channel. I will again link that one down below. So for part 2, I don't do a full cover page like I do for part 1 because this is kind of halfway through the year. Instead, I just blew up one of my favorite photos from the second half of 2024, and I just created a big title on here, and I took one piece out because I wanted that to be transparent from the first week. So I document my Project Life weekly by creating a weekly spread that covers usually Monday through Sunday and just kind of reflecting on everything going on in my life. So at this point in time, my daughter was living at home from college between her freshman and sophomore year, and so she's going to show up a little bit more and until about August when she moves out. I'm using a lot of Ali Edwards, Cocoa Daisy, Studio Calico, and I'll kind of talk about that as we flip through. Almost every spread, if not every spread from this album has a full process video on my YouTube channel here, and I do have a playlist if you want to binge watch all of those in a row. If you're new to this project or want some ideas, there are tons of process videos, so I'm not going to talk too much about each spread, but typically I work with a kit. During this year, I was working through some older kits from Studio Calico, and I was combining them with a few things from Cocoa Daisy. So this is a spread that's a good example of that. A lot of this was from an older Studio Calico kit, but then a few of these pieces are from Cocoa Daisy. I'm thinking these ones, I think. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. I also like to do repeated embellishment clusters. So here I did these stitched flowers with some word phrase strips. I also was using a lot of the Ali Edwards story kits in this album. Those have since been discontinued, and the new kits from Ali Edwards are less specifically themed, which is going to be super fun to kind of switch up my Project Life. But at this point in time, I was still using those. So this is, I think, the Collect story kit. And those were very themed kits, and it was kind of fun to use the theme as kind of a way to frame my life during that week. This is the week my daughter started her first day at Starbucks, and I was getting ready to go on a huge vacation to Europe. So this is my first spread for my trip to Europe. And when I travel, I include my travel in here, even though I intend to do a separate travel album. I have not yet done it for this vacation, but I will. But what I do is, because I went to different cities and things, I break my spreads up to make sense for me rather than keeping them to weekly. So this spread was while I was in Berlin. And so it's only, I think it's, 4 days? So that's kind of what's documented here. And I used the digital version of the travel release from Ali Edwards for this one. This spread I did Prague and Vienna, and I included a insert here to add a little bit more because I was including 2 cities in this one, and I used the Senses story kit, which I believe is a little bit older in my stash, and just trying to use up some of those older supplies. And then this one is Budapest, and I believe I was using a collection from Vicky Boutin, I think. Hopefully that's correct. And so I'm not always working with a kit designed for Project Life. Sometimes I'm using other scrapbook supplies and whatever I find that I like. Sometimes I'm using pieces from my stash and just trying to, you know, come up with a theme usually for each spread rather than pulling from everything, because it makes it a little bit more cohesive and easier to put together. And then this one is Istanbul. And this one looks like it's from an older Studio Calico kit again. I liked this one where I had numbers because there were so many things that happened in Istanbul. So I was able to kind of number some of my photos and then do some journaling about the items, like to kind of document what each of these photos represented. And also doing just some other journaling about like the overview. So I have like one about food, some highlights, an overview of the stop, and then what our routines were for the morning and the evening. Now back home, I was so sick from traveling. So of course that's what gets documented. And my daughter was also moving into her first apartment. So this was a busy week. I also was using some older supplies from Ali Edwards, just trying to stash bust, which is something I love this project for because it's a great opportunity to use up so many products. Moving into the Stories by the Month kit. So this is the August Stories by the Month kit. And for 2024, I was using these kits usually for the last week of the month because they had these cards in them, which included space that I was using for ephemera. I'm doing something a little bit different for 2025 with my ephemera. So I think that this year, my Stories by the Month kits might be like the first week of the month rather than the last week. Here's another story kit. This is the Make Story kit. Again, an older one. I believe I was using some of the ones that I kind of piled up in my stash. Another story kit. This one was, I think, the Let Go story kit. And for this one, so I had these words, so I was trying to kind of come up with stories that fit the products, which was kind of fun. And I kind of like that as a lens when I'm working through prepping for this project. Sometimes I will be going back and then deciding a kit, but usually I like to choose my kit before I actually live that week, so I can think about the types of stories that I'm going to want to tell when I'm capturing my photos and my notes. This one looks like another stash busting one. I've got some Studio Calico, I've got some Cocoa Daisy, I've got some Ali Edwards, just a combination of products. September Stories by the Month, following the same pattern of using these cards for ephemera, using these cards for a title. Typically I put my title card up here, but because this one doesn't have any 4x6 pockets, I put it over here and it doesn't really matter. I had a bunch of photos I wanted to include, so I created a grid in Photoshop to add 6 photos onto a 4x6. This was another stash busting one. I wanted to use up these square details cards, so I really liked kind of doing this repetitive journaling element across the spread and just a different way to use the 4x6 pockets. This was another story kit, Grit, I think is what this one was. And this was also the week of my birthday, so documenting a little bit about turning 38. And I'm using my typewriter in here quite a bit too. I got a typewriter for my birthday, and you can see that like here and such as I'm using it in my album. So here was another quick weekend trip. We went to Quebec City. So this, you can see the dates, it's only the 18th through the 20th. Again, not worrying too much about sticking to the Monday through Sunday weekly format, and instead making the spread kind of fit what I have going on in my life. This one I used, I believe it was like the Alpha quarterly scrapbook kit from Ali Edwards. I was able to kind of cut these pattern papers to create this repeated pattern across the spread with these repeated shapes for my journaling. I think this is just some stash items, and sometimes I want to just like pull random items from my stash When I do that, I'm trying to coordinate colors. So you can see I'm kind of using like the yellow and the blues and kind of bringing that in across the spread. October stories by the month. This one has an insert. Usually when I have an insert, I add a tab on here, but I guess I forgot to do it on this one. This was the week of Halloween and moving into November. So I kind of did like October-ish stuff on this side and Halloween. And then on this side, it's more moving into November and fall. Even though I believe this is all from the October stories by the month kit. There were these repetitive journaling cards in the kit, and I really like when they do something like that and bringing them all into the same spread, including photos from my daughter as she sends me stuff from her life, which is not that often that I get photos from her. And I don't always include them because it's not part of my life anymore. This is more focused. This is more like the story of my life. So this week I didn't have a ton of photos. I think, yeah, I'm not sure why. Like this was such a busy week. There was just so much going on and so many photos. And then this week I just didn't. That's okay. I have less photos. Not a lot's going on. So I'm including screenshots of the news. This was like election day. I have photos of my cat and just like a couple other random little things going on. So just adding some more filler cards. This was the fan story kit from Allie Edwards. For this one, I used this card that has numbers 1 through 5 and then paired it with 5 photos to tell 5 separate stories. And using this old card from Kelly Perky because it's so specific, and we got a new bed this week. So I wanted to document that, and I'm like, okay, I have to finally use this card that I've been sitting on forever. I have a lot of older cards from the Kelly Perky shop that they're just really hard to use because although they're beautifully designed, a lot of them are so specific. This one, I really love how this one came out. I think this was the Teach story kit or Learn School. I think it was called School. And this week I had nothing related to school going on, so I used some of the supplies that were less school themed to tell the story of this week. The November stories by the month. There was this vellum page that I cropped down to add around this photo that I really like how that turned out. Then moving into December. So I tend to try to keep up with my project life, pretty much doing it maybe 1 or 2 weeks behind when I actually live the week. December, I tend to fall off, and I caught up in January because I'm also doing December daily. So I think the spreads maybe like this was maybe the last one I did, or even this one before taking a bit of a break. And then I came back to finish up the album. This one is using another Studio Calico kit, which was also the last Studio Calico kit that I had sitting in my stash combined as a kit. I still have a lot of Studio Calico products, but they're no longer in kit form. They're just worked into my stash. So I was happy to have that pile of Studio Calico kits done. The December stories by the month. I did this one not the last week because I didn't want to use it for the week of Christmas. Instead, I used it for the week before Christmas, and I was sick. Got a lot of snow, including my ephemera. Then here's the week of Christmas. So for this one, I used December daily supplies for Christmas and Christmas Eve. I added in an insert here with, this was my December daily sampler page, which I put together in my December daily process videos. And then this was my December daily planning page, which I just wanted to keep. In the past, I have added more inserts in here of traditional layouts. In 2024, I ended up not really making any because I was keeping separate story albums, and I just felt like I didn't have the time to do additional traditional pages for this album. And although I do like the way it looks, they tend to get pretty bulky when I do that. And it also kind of breaks up the spread. Like a lot of my spreads are pretty cohesive across the spread. And when you're putting an insert that's using different products, it tends to kind of break it up. Like you can see here, you kind of have to go like this to see the whole spread. So I'm thinking in 2025, I'm not going to do inserts of traditional layouts and just do my pocket pages. Maybe have inserts with more pocket pages if I need more space, but that's it. But we'll see if I actually stick with that. Then to wrap up the year, I finished off the album by using these 3 things cards that were in the Stories by the Month kits. I did something very similar in the first half of 2024, so I just repeated the same formula here by pulling a photo from each month and pairing it with 3 highlights from those months. It was a little hard to come up with some of my highlights because months like August were like ridiculously busy. And then there were some other months where there wasn't a ton to document. Like here I put evening walks for July because July was kind of quiet because we were getting ready to go on our huge vacation in August. But I still love how this came out. I had a lot of fun putting it together. And I'm so happy to see this completed album and be able to go put this one on the shelf in my living room. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye.